Today we are going to teach you how to teach your dog a reward marker. Reward markers are established by way of classical conditioning. Classical conditioning was discovered by the 18th century scientist Ivan Pavlov. Pavlov, by accident, started to notice his dog would salivate any time it entered the apparatus room. Dog would then salivate even more at the appearance of the lab technician. Of course, the lab technician was responsible for feeding the dog. The dog was predicting being fed at the sight of the lab technician and the change of the environment. At the time, Pavlov was experimenting on conditioned reflex responses, something that later taught the world that a dog could predict an outcome based on a conditioned stimulus. In short, if a neutral, meaningless noise or visual signal precursors something that causes an emotional response in the dog, such as food, a toy, affection, maybe a walk, or maybe something unpleasant, it will therefore adopt itself as a predictor and become equal, if not more powerful. To interpret this into everyday life, a dog that is reactive to a doorbell responds this way because it is classically conditioned to understand that the doorbell equates somebody coming to the door. Another good example is the way your dog responds to its dog lead when you're putting your coat on or getting your keys ready to go out for a walk. So we use classic conditioning to develop a reward marker with our dog. So what is a reward marker? A reward marker is a way of marking good behaviour as it happens. When we teach a dog an obedience command, we want to give the dog a feeling of achievement along the way. If we use a clicker as an example, click and then follow it with a reward, such as a piece of food, the clicker will very quickly become a precursor and become a dopamine surge in itself. Once a reward marker is classically conditioned correctly, it then becomes a subconscious reflex response. It's worth adding that for this to be effective, the neutral stimulus, click, must always be separate and come a split second before the unconditioned stimulus, which is food. Now, this is where it becomes interesting. In Robert Sapolsky's dopamine jackpot study, he has a monkey trained to see a light, then pull a lever, and then it gets a food reward. They monitor the levels of dopamine in the monkey and noticed that the highest levels of dopamine was at the first signal, which was the light. So therefore, when we reward mark a dog with the likes of a clicker, the clicker will become more powerful than the food once it's classically conditioned properly. It's all about anticipation. Humans are the same. Opening presents can sometimes be more rewarding than what's inside. Start with a hungry dog. Test if the dog will take food before you start using the clicker. Use a treat pouch with a big wide opening for easy access. To classically condition a reward marker in the most effective way, you want the click and the food represented to the dog's mouth to be within 2 seconds. So we click, food toward dog's mouth, presented, ready for it to eat within 2 seconds.
We can also use balls or toys as a reward marker.
You can use high value rewards for this, but our preference is to use existential food. Existential food means to give it its own daily allowance. So if your dog is on 200 to 300 grams of food per day, we want to be able to give them that 200 to 300 grams in a treat pouch and use it for our obedience training. The reason we prefer this is because if we ever need to get the dog through any stronger struggles, we can then increase the value of the reward and use that to be a much stronger reinforcer for the exercise. Practice for multiple segments of 5 minutes over 48 hours. We generally say if you could get in between 5 and 8 5-minute repetitions over 48 hours, that should just about get the dog classically conditioned to the new reward marker. Once the reward marker is charged up after 48 hours, use it in your everyday obedience. Whilst I'm working with Darcy, I am clicking and marking every time she goes and gives me a good behaviour, whether it's onto placement, whether she's going into a down position, whether she's sitting. I'm multiply reward marking all these behaviours to make her feel good for what she's doing. One of the dogs we have with us every day, Dory, she is deaf and blind. She's got about 30% sight. So when we do reward markers with her, it has to be a visual signal. So we use a thumbs up with Dory. Put our thumb up and then we give food. We put our thumb up and then we give food. Darcy, however, she's trained to a clicker. So when we're doing reward markers of Darcy, we click and then we reward. We click and then we reward. When we're delivering the food to the dog, we want to do it in a flat palm, nice big easy target. Underneath the thumb, between index finger, middle finger and the start of your palm of your hand, just like so. Even though we're using a clicker as an example within this video, you can use a verbal reward marker such as yes, good, or something that you choose yourself. It's also worth noting that when you're charging up a reward marker for these 48 hours, you don't have to ask your dog to do anything, sit or lie down or give you any eye contact. You just need to click or use your verbal reward marker and give the food. You're just trying to get the dog to understand that this marker always precurses food so they understand it has a good feeling. Reward markers are so important in the training with your dog. They give you that connection, the engagement, and that really good relationship that you need. As always, like and subscribe, and if you've got any questions, just leave them in the comments. Thanks for watching.